practices. Ooh, sorry. Okay, we're recording. And so that's some amazing work that she's done. I also want to introduce next Dr. Mmatshilo Motesi, who is, I mean, we had a wonderful conversation just talking about the trauma of childbirth and womb healing. She has an online school, Africa Ikalafe, where you can take different courses around this. And she was really working to show how powerful and great Africa is, right? And how we can push back and really reclaim our souls and how we were afflicted. So amazing, amazing work around that. She has graciously offered a 50% discount. So please write down this code for her upcoming course, Conversations with My Womb. So please take down the website, please take down the code. We are very thankful that she's offering this for people. I will show this again at the end. So this is something that you can go to her website and check out and learn more about her work. And then lastly, we have Ms. Michele Irving, who I said is from Dangriga, Belize, a community worker and advocate for many years. She has the organization, Productive Organization for Women in Action, and this is a community-based women's group fighting for the rights of women and girls and really addressing gender-based violence and discrimination. So those are our panelists for today. We are going to have about 45 minutes where we will discuss some questions amongst ourselves. And then we will leave some time at the end, probably 20 or 30 minutes or so, to address questions from the audience. And so if there are any questions that come to mind while we're speaking, please put them in the chat. You can send it to me directly. And then I will be able to kind of just keep track of those questions. So let me just take a moment. I want to just spotlight the speakers for everyone so you can see us clearly here. I can't talk and do something at the same time. That's why I just got really quiet. And so, okay, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And so I really just wanted to start off broadly, just with kind of like a broad question, because when we hear ancestral healing, I imagine there's many different things that kind of come to mind. And so just from your perspective and from your work, and whoever wants to go first, how would you define ancestral healing? And how does it show up in your work? And what do you think has kind of allowed you to really, talk about it? So whoever would like to go first.
Okay, I'm willing to start. Firstly, thank you so much for the invitation to share, to heal at the same time, because this is also a healing cycle of some sort. So in honoring the title, In Our Mother's Tongues, I will start off by inviting my ancestors in my mother tongue. Both from the maternal and the paternal. And I start off with from the maternal, because usually when we connect with our ancestors, we start from the maternal. Their totem is an elephant that changed into a wild pig. Their totem is a monkey. Bakata, Banatsweni. Their totem is a crocodile. On the paternal side, their totem is a baboon. Their totem is a cow. Their totem is a swallow. But in addition to ancestors that are connected to me by means of lineage, I also have non-biological ancestors. And that totem would be a serpent, a leopard, and a she-lion. And why do I do this? Why do I start by doing this? It's already like answering the question This is a way of reminding us that according to African spirituality, we exist in multiple dimensions. We do not exist in one dimension. So we have multiple realities that we exist in. So in a sense, then, when we connect with the ancestors, we connect both with the unborn, the living, the departed. We connect body, mind, and soul. We connect with self, others, and nature, including land, of course, because land is our biggest ancestor. We also connect with our feminine and masculine that exist in us. We also connect with the sacred and the secular, because in our African spirituality, there is no difference between the divine and the secular. And all these realities I inhabit all at once. And in Western psychology, when I hear voices, when I see visions, I will be classified as schizophrenic. So essentially what this means then is honoring the multiple dimensions and realities that we exist in as Africans. And that for me is African ancestral healing. And health, therefore, or healing is about ensuring that there is harmony within all these entities. And finally, to say that, interestingly, healing, this word, we are using it in a continuous sense. Why is it in a continuous sense? It's in a continuous sense because we are reconnecting all the time. We are healing all the time. For as long as we're alive, we are maintaining the connection. For as long as we're alive, we do that. And finally, to say that how I do it, an example I could say, when I visit my grandmother's village, we have a shrine at home. Before the time when there were churches, we didn't wait for Sunday to connect with spirit. We connected with spirit every day, whether in joy or in pain. So this is basically an example of how I connect. And here, healing is happening even when there is no fracture, even when there is no need for mending anything. So healing is a connection with all of who I am. Thank you.
Dr. Motesi, I got chills. I got chills just how you were describing the different dimensions when we think about ancestral healing. Very, very beautiful just to hear kind of your view on that. And so Dr. Codrington and Ms. Irving, I'm curious kind of how you define like ancestral healing, how it kind of shows up into your work,
Thank you very much for that. And I am so touched because I just think of myself as a student of ancestral healing and trying my best to learn as we continue to share, because I think it's for me, I think it's just putting myself as a student of Africa to learn to reclaim, retrieve, revive, re-understand what that means, what ancestral healing means, what ancestral um calling, living in terms of those dimensions that my sister just aptly described. So it's like for me, it's a hodgepodge of understanding, of saying this is who we are in the diaspora, having been taken away from our mother's breasts, not being fed by that, not being told that that is a poisonous milk, that's a ugly form. And how do you then understand, how do you retrieve in the context of in the context of a total, complete, ongoing poison of that. And how do you say then, this is what I need, this is for me, this is for my family. And so that means that you really have to even disconnect from your birthing mother and your birthing experience and your home experience, because that's not what was taught. That's not what, we understand to be correct. And so how do you then now make a complete different family, reclaim family, reconstruct family, deconstruct what was said to you? And so even as we speak in this time that we are calling Women's Month, International Women's Day, even that is a dichotomy, because we know that women are important, and women are every single day, every single month, every single time. Women is needed to heal, to connect, to share. And so within this space, how do we reconnect sisterhood, motherhood, sharing, and learning? So that's what it is for me. It's an ongoing question. I don't have any, in my experience, any totem. We don't have any semblance of where we went to. And so reclaiming, land, sea, earth, fire, ensuring that then we try our utmost best to go back and pull all those little pieces of what is in our DNA, of who we are, and then re-express that in our community, in our space, and in our family. So that's what it is for me. So thank you very much. I'm a student. I learn, I share, and I just try to say that Africa is in us, and we're in Africa, and there is nothing shameful. There's nothing bad about there's nothing evil. They'll tell us, it's obia, it's bad. We shouldn't light a candle to our ancestors. We shouldn't call on our ancestors. So it's within that context that I am here. Thank you.
Well, first, I just want to give honor to the powerful women in this space. And I had to go last because the wisdom of elders is part of ancestral healing, right? Is stepping aside and allowing yourself to be showered by the wisdom that has been passed on, and respecting and honoring the fact that we are all still students. And so with that, I practice as an African-centered psychologist, and I'm constantly unlearning the work that I learned through my doctoral training programs, and finding ways to integrate my authentic self, which has also been trained in traditional African dance and drum, into my clinical work. So there's some powerful things have been shared. Where I think my unique contribution will be is talking about how we work to decolonize Western therapeutic spaces, right? With the understanding of ancestral healing. And I think when we talk about the concept of ancestral healing, sometimes it can feel a bit esoteric for people who were born in this country, born in the United States. Although we can be African-centered and we recognize that we have a strong lineage, the idea of healing something in our ancestral line, when we are not direct recipients of those rituals, the ancestral DNA is something we have to search for, right? It can feel a little bit distanced. I want to make an intentional departure from talking about the concept of ancestral trauma, from an idea that we inherit both this intergenerational trauma, but we also inherit the ancestral wisdom. We inherit the aptitudes. We inherit the traditional rhythms that encode the values and the mores and the ways in which we are supposed to treat each other, right? All of those things are oftentimes part of ancestral healing, and sometimes we just focus on, in our therapeutic work, exploring the trauma, exploring the intergenerational trauma. But what about the gifts? What about the gifts of our ancestors and not the wounds of our ancestors? So in my work, I try to bridge the gap by really making space for people to bring in spirit and people to bring in movement and rhythm. And those paths, to me, are the quintessential pathways to ancestral healing within what we know of as sort of psychotherapy, or even doing sort of billable work within an African-centered context. So what does that mean? For me, it means really making space to talk about who's in your family lineage, right? So thinking about a clinical assessment and getting family history, Dr. Fukuyama talks about a seed of a seed of a seed of a seed, right? And this seed principle allows us to go beyond the first generation, but to go as far back as you can, and to really think about what are some of the oral traditions? What are some of the folk tales? What are some of the songs that your grandmother used to sing? What are some of the lessons and the values that got preserved, right? What are some of the ways in which ancestral worship or veneration is practiced inside of your family? And even if we don't necessarily think about setting up an ancestral altar, and I saw someone in the chat say, inspired to set up an ancestral altar, we can commune with ancestors as we normally walk and talk through the day, right? We can speak to our ancestors. We have an ability to call their names and invoke their spirit just by calling their names. As we think about, when I do grief work with my clients, we talk about how do you commune with your ancestors in the spiritual realm, right? And how do you create new cultural practices that honor their legacy, right? And so the path of spirit is present, and then artistic, musical, rhythmic, movement expression is key. For people who are of African descent, we know, right? We know that the key to our healing is not only just through spirit, but it's through rhythm and movement. And we see that throughout the diaspora. That's the one thing that has been retained, almost to the point where the same rhythms that were created by the Numu centuries ago, the Malinke people and the rhythms of the djembe were created by the women. Those rhythms are still practiced today. Why has it existed for so long? Because those rhythms are symbolic. It is a language that teaches us about the traditions, the ways that we need to honor various parts of our culture. It is a key to understand healing, and it directs and guides us, which hopefully I'll get a chance to talk about later. And so ancestral healing means bringing the drumming, the rhythms into the therapeutic practice, right? Allowing for individuals to break out of Western frames. When you even think about meditation, and when you even think about prayer, and when you think about what it means to connect mind, body, and spirit, connecting with indigenous African rhythms and allowing for the music and the rhythms that have a certain vibrational energy to penetrate, so that the work is not just cognitive work, but it's sensory work. It's connecting with those ancient rhythms, and it's allowing us to commune with ancestors.
Thank you to each of you for really broadening our definition of ancestral healing. I'm so happy I didn't just make up a definition and just kind of started there, because there's so many different ways, right, that we can look at it and talk about it. So I appreciate kind of hearing how each of you are incorporating that into the work. Just thinking about we've spoken a lot about the benefits, and I was just wondering, like, what are some of the challenges that you've noticed in your work when it comes to like ancestral healing, when it comes into integrating into this work? I know, Jamila, you talked about kind of unlearning, right? I feel like after graduate school, it's kind of unlearning pretty much most of what you learned in graduate school when you're working with our communities. So I'm just curious, like, what have you noticed have been some of the challenges?
Okay, I'll go. One kind of creation that also inspired me quite a lot is a weaver finch. So one of my favorite words is reweaving, and that's why most of the time but there's always a title reweaving somewhere in my work, and I'd like to just briefly reweave the words of Michele and Jamila as well. Just kind of reweave them and respond to them. Jamila spoke about talking to ancestors is like, even as we call their names, it's healing. So I wanted to invite participants in the webinar to write in the chat names of grandmothers, mothers, women that they want to invite as a way of also communicating with them. Just when you said it, I thought it's a great idea. Your paternal grandmother, your maternal grandmother, put them out there in the chat. Let's us connect with them as well. But then also from Michele, and also Jamila, you said that you spoke about we are learning. In terms of African spirituality, even grandmothers learn from young people. And that's why you have proverbs. We have proverbs that speaks about the young learning from the elders, and the elders also learning from the young. I mean, those who understand Setswana in the group, a proverb like "Botlhale ba phala bo tswa phalaneng" or "Phala e senang phalana lesilo," it's also an indication that learning is not unilateral. Learning is bi-directional from different generations as well. So what are the challenges? Two challenges I can speak to. We come from a history where we have been taught that anything that has got to do with our beliefs is demonic, it's inferior, it's not worth taking on. So our education system teaches us either to be indifferent to anything that has to do with indigenous people, or to deny it or refuse it outright. So the challenge is, if you're called to healing, for instance, you come from a family of healers and you have been through Western education. Western education messes you up. It messes you up because what does it do? It teaches us to depend on logic. It focuses on feeding the rational mind. And the rational mind, our understanding of what is logic, is based on Western philosophy. It's got nothing to do with our own philosophy. Our own philosophy is what I described in the beginning about the interconnectedness of all creation. So many people who are called to healing find it difficult to receive the gifts. They receive the gift as a burden and as a curse. So we step into healing already thinking this is difficult. Why that's the case? It's because we are applying logical frame to something that is spiritual and intuitive. And that's why we struggle. So all these split personalities, split personalities between African, indigenous, and contemporary is what is a challenge. Another challenge is, I always make an example that if you are called to do medicine, everyone is excited. Yay, you're going to study medicine. But if you are called to be a healer, which is being a medicine man or medicine woman, everyone says, oh, damn, already we're using that frame of thinking. And also, it comes from us. Our relationship with our ancestors is no longer a relationship of love. It's a relationship of punishment. Just like the punitive God who's standing up there somewhere with a whip, waiting for anyone to make a mistake and they whip. So even our relationship with ancestors is influenced by Christianity, is influenced by foreign religions, and that's what we need to unlearn. Finally, one challenge is we also have unhealed ancestors. We have unhealed ancestors. We come from people who were enslaved, who attended residential schools, who were killed during the liberation wars, who grew up in war zones, who are in a state of chronic poverty, deprivation, and stress. So the challenge then is our bodies, normally our bodies produces biochemicals which shape our genetic makeup. So I like to ask the question, what kind of genetic legacy are we leaving? Most of the time when you speak about legacy, people talk about wealth. No one speaks about generational health. So this is essentially about generational health. What kind of genetic makeup are we living? Because positive emotions are generative. They expand the DNA helix. Negative emotions compress the DNA helix. So that's a challenge of unhealed ancestors. And finally, when I do divination, there's always a different kind of energy between doing a divine reading for people who were never oppressed and people who were oppressed. There's always a difference. And it used to bother me quite a lot until I had to go and read up this and understand where the compression of the DNA helix comes from. And that even we, as we heal ourselves, we will also heal those who have passed.
It's beautiful to be in this space, and I want to give thanks again for being here, because as we continue to learn and continue to think about our own healing journey and our own challenges, as we continue to work with others, to support others. And I noticed one thing very curious. I think that when we go and think about spiritually asking for support for others, we're actually finding healing ourselves. And this is just what I have come to just learn, because I think that as I grow older and older in the work, of course, our bodies start to ache. Our blood pressure start to rise. Our, blood sugar is level up or down. And we start to think that, what is going on? What is going on with ourselves? And as we send ask ancestors for healing, for look at this person in their journey of healing. And then we start to see that in looking at others in their journey of healing, we are actually healing ourselves. And so this is manifesting in my life. I have been dealing with some ailments, even physical mobility, and I start to, different people dealing with the same thing. And I said, we have to ask for ancestors for healing. And each morning in my meditation and, I do have an altar that I sometimes attend to well and sometimes not so well. But this is just to say that ancestors always take care of us very well, even if we are not doing the work sometimes that we should be doing, just because our manifestation, our calling on them for that support. And personally, I would just like to share, my daughter, her name is Stanley, which is sort of her beloved, because we connect, being in Belize, we have connected with Africa, being Pan-Africanist, her father and myself. And then Iseoma, which is Igbo for something, meaning something good. And then we also give her an Arawak name, which is Igneri, which is the name of the Arawak language. And so in invoking her name, we are calling to bear all of our African and indigenous from over this side ancestors. And so that's another thing we have to think about how we connect it. For us, it's not only our African, but it's also our indigenous from over that were here before Columbus ancestors. And so how do we then ensure that we embody and we respect and we invoke all of those ancestors, and ancestors who would have brought hair in chains, enslaved, but ancestors who were fighting to preserve the land, the life, and the livelihood here as we speak. And so, how do we incorporate all of these ancestors in our healing journey, but also coming to the situation broken, coming to our lives in chains and in being told that this is not your land, you don't have no. So how do we decolonize the work? How do we let people understand that this is what that is? And so when we talk about grieve, work with people that are grieving, that have lost their loved ones. As we speak, we are grieving the loss of Aurelio Martinez, one of our great Garifuna music, who brought to life, the traditions of our ways and thinking in song and in artistry and in drumming. And so, he died in a plane crash in the sea. And when we look back at the lyrics of his song, we saw him talking a lot about, the sea and the river and the land. And so the sea came to claim him. How do we talk about that in terms of healing? Now, a lot of times this is not, for my experience, so much outrightly there, but it is in our hearts. And a lot of times in the healing journey, in working with others, it is just that, we know that we are connected regardless, especially from African ancestry, regardless of how you look, So when you come in front of us, we are the original people, the people that were here before, and regardless of how you look, we will know that our ancestors will accept you, will draw you in, will make sure that you are well, will, share with you whatever we have. And so that's how it is, and that's how we continue, regardless of the challenges. There are challenges. There are definitely challenges. There are challenges because we are in a not even post, we like to say colonial society. We're still in a colonial experience and society. It's not post for us. And so we have to continue to work in that dimension. But the main takeaway for me is while we work with healing others, we are healing ourselves. And within our family, within our structure, while we study, my daughter is studying Western medicine, but she's certainly using the healing practices of Africa and our indigenous ways to do that. She said, Mom, I don't know how I did it, but I just think she have a picture of her ancestors, the altar on her iPhone or iWatch, whatever it is. And but the point is that she is obviously bridging the gap. And when she needs to draw for strength, she draws to our traditional ways. I just hope she would learn to incorporate that in terms of healing and in terms of westernized medicine. So I just, that's my experiences with the quest.
I will just add a component as we think about the challenges that might get in the way of us really embracing ancestral healing. I want to call out religion, and not religion as a whole, but certain tenets of certain religious traditions. In order to practice ancestral healing, we have to first subscribe to the fundamental premise that there's a connection between the living and the dead. And not only that that connection exists, but we are fundamentally saying that there's something valuable that ancestors have to give us. And before we take, we have to honor, right? So ancestral veneration, right, or the practice of invoking our ancestors, honoring our ancestors, acknowledging the role that they have played in shaping our lives and also the lives of the unborn, oftentimes doesn't sit well with many religions that have as a fundamental tenet monotheism, where you have to have a direct worship of God alone, and any invoking of anything else that is spiritual is idolatry or it's sin, right? And I know Mama Motesi talked a little bit about this before, but I want to share just a quick vignette from my own personal life. So my family is Caribbean, and my grandmother used to tell us a story all the time. She grew up in an Episcopal church, highly religious. As we know, one of the main forms of colonialism was religion. And she was under the tutelage of someone by the name of Bishop Vesterby, right? Bishop Vesterby was very much about monotheism, and to the point where they couldn't even play mass, right? So for those who are familiar with Caribbean culture, carnival was a sin, right? And ancestral offerings and communing with ancestors was also a sin. And he would tell her that you cannot be like those conga niggas, right? Conga niggas, which were basically niggas from the Congo, or people of African descent in the Caribbean, right? And this is the mentality, right? The neo-colonialism mentality that's coming down even from our own, right? And so we have to recognize that as much as we know as a people that we have been fortified by our relationship with God, and we've been fortified through our spirituality, it's been hijacked in many ways. And so there are certain frames that exist within certain religious practices that do not allow for this ancestral veneration to take place, the honoring, the respect, the communing, because in a sense, the thought is that you're basically deifying an ancestor, and nothing can compete with God. And so because of that, my grandmother never talked a thing about ancestors. I never had one glimpse of an altar. I don't even think she said the word ancestor, but she had stories for days around her ancestors. And so I think the challenge becomes, again, calling out ways in which our religious practices have been forced into a Western frame, and ensuring that we do not look at ancestral worship or ancestral veneration as something that is in competition with monotheism, but rather it's just a way of maintaining a spiritual connection and expressing gratitude.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Dr. Motesi unfortunately had just a power outage, so I'm going to see if I can send her the link by phone. But thank you to each of you all highlighting the challenges. One, thinking about the impact of colonialism, neo-colonialism, thinking about religion too, and the ways that also affects our connection, to our ancestors, and even the ways of that internalized thinking, where we're taught to kind of look down or see that as something demonic. As you were speaking, I was thinking there are a lot of different practices that each of you have been mentioning as ways that we can connect to our ancestors through names. So names being in one way. Altars, we've had a discussion about kind of altars. We've talked about invoking, speaking our ancestors' names. Sometimes I get a little worried because I speak their names. I'm like, do they want me calling on them right now? Sometimes I bring food, to the altar. I don't know if they like the food, right? And so sometimes I question kind of what I'm doing, just as I try to incorporate this more into my life. And so I was just wondering if each of you could kind of speak to where could someone start, for someone really wanting to kind of connect more with their ancestors, think about how this could be a healing practice. Where might be some places where someone could start? Mm-hmm.
Well, I could think about where I started because, as my sister Jamila just said, we're in the Caribbean, we realize that we know the role of white supremacy religion. That's what I refer to it, because the religion is a religion of colonizers and enslavers. And so obviously it wouldn't be a religion of upliftment and self-esteem for you who were enslaved or who are enslaved. And in many ways, we might still be, as it relates to our economic system, our food system, the things that we think that are right. We may not be supportive of our traditional ways or things that we see as ours. We may still be looking down at it. We may all be saying, like, people, this has become my favorite thing now. People would say, you have to incorporate more vegetables in your diet. And so what is vegetables? Even things that we consider vegetables, it's colonial. And so if it's not broccoli or cauliflower or iceberg lettuce, then it's not vegetable. So if it's okra and spinach and kalalu and jokoto and those things that are traditionally grown and we would have known as our home food. It's not vegetable. So if it's not a Caesar salad, quote unquote, it's not vegetables. And we have always been eating vegetables. It's just how we think of what that is and how we respect our traditional food. And so how do we reclaim that? How do we ensure that if it's not from a package, for example, our children maybe will not respect our cassava bread, for example. I was in Suriname and I brought, what I brought from their cassava bread because I wanted to see if their cassava bread was like our cassava bread and to see. And so I thought that that was like the greatest thing. And I brought a bitter cup, and that cup was you put in water and you detox with the bitterness from the cup. And it was so amazing to see how our traditions are so beautifully enhanced and are there as opposed to something that is prepackaged and made in China and mass produced. And so even I was thinking this morning, I was this head wrap that I had is embroidery, and it was in Suriname as well. And so I was thinking of all the people who stitched my clothes and how that is a part of me because I know them or I know their loving hands, even if I don't know their face or their body, but I know that they incorporated their spirit in each stitch that they did. And so I proudly embody who they are and what they do in terms of even the clothes I wear and the stitching that is on me. And so that's where you start. You just start to really understand, respect, and love, people who are there for you, who have been there for you, dead or alive. It's incorporating all of this. And that's why I put in the chat love. How do we incorporate that genuine love for who we are and people who look like us? How do we ensure that that is always there? Because really, we don't have it. We are trying to work at it, and we can't really ask our ancestors for that support if we do not love each other, who we see now, who we are interacting with. And love is also respecting. And until we start to understand that we are at different miles in our journey. We are all in different. So just start, just say, I want to start. And where do I start? You don't have to put up an altar to make you start to understand your ancestors. You could just start to say, okay, how do I think of what is happening as it relates to who we are and what do we think of ourselves. So just on your journey, I think just understanding love, respect, incorporating a broader sense of understanding that we are love and we bring that love, honor, and respect to the table. So we don't have to know everything because we continue to learn daily. We continue to find we continue to find wisdom in our mothers along the way. Our mother, when when I talk about mother, it's not just that woman who physically gave me birth. It's also the mothers that nurtured me along the way, that that take me up in, their minds and their hearts, give a kind word to me, and even rebuke me for, Michelle, that was pure BS. Because of their love, they're giving that rebuke, and it allows me to then go back and think, what was I saying? Yes, it was stupid indeed. What did I do? And so, how can I do better? And so, even sharing love is not just this pure, um, just good, quote unquote. It's also pointing out your negatives, your lacking sides, because as human beings, we that the yin and the yang live together. And so how do we then have the mother that help us to feed the positive wolf, and to kind of make sure that we put the negative one in check. And so I do think that our continued journey of just sharing, caring, and retrieving, respecting ours and what we are, and even the grandmother who never play mass, or who never taught us mass, or who was very quote unquote, religious. I know what that is too, my grandmother. But she taught me love, and love. I take the love that she took me to church, and I met so many young people there who we continue to share with. That wasn't a bad thing. That was true love, and that was what she knew, and so she shared that with me. And so I call upon her daily to continue strengthen me, and I am sure she understand that I have added some more things to what she taught me, and I think that she would be proud of me incorporating things that maybe she only feared to incorporate, but she knew that they were there. And so I think that's how I think about it. So just start with love, and give yourself a break too, because sometimes we beat up on ourselves that we don't know this and we don't know that. But just know what you know, and do what you do, and do you, boo.
Thank you, Michelle, for, just letting us know that it doesn't have to look or sound a certain way, and that we can really start, within, and start, with love. I do want to highlight Dr. Motesi is back. Unfortunately, I'm just not able to spotlight her video,
Okay.
but she is here with us in the room. And please, Dr. Motesi, feel free to chime in and talking about where we can start with our ancestral healing. We have about 30 minutes left. And so please, I want to open it up to participants to feel free to drop any questions that you have in the chat. So I'll go through those questions for the next 20 minutes or so before we finish. But Jamila, I did want to give you an opportunity to add on to what Michelle was talking about. When we think about where can we start when it comes to our ancestral healing?
Thank you, Dr. Osei. So in honor of my mother, Afua Sewa Codrington, I will share my entry point, which was through her teachings and under her tutelage, but it was through the arts. It was through the cultural arts. And I alluded to this earlier in terms of the different ways in which ancestral DNA is transmitted, from one generation through the next. And it's the artistic expression, right? The traditional cultural art forms. And so, as a child of the 80s, right? I grew up going to, I was in the African dance and drum circle in New York City, grew up learning traditional African dance and drum, and recognizing not only how it felt in my body, but as I got older and started to learn about the sacredness of the dance, the sacredness of the rhythms and of the drum itself. I was able to connect that cultural art form to healing work. But that was later on in life. But what I know now is that, many traditional African dances are performed as a means to communicate with spirit, as a way of seeking guidance, right? For anyone who has ever taken or heard about traditional African dance rhythms, there's a rhythm called kakilambe and a dance called kakilambe. Kakilambe is really petitioning ancestral spirits to bring blessings. Whether back in the day, of course, it was things like a good harvest, rainwater, children, right? But the dance itself is a way of communing and basically praying with your feet, praying with the rhythms behind you. And there are other dances that cleanse the body, that cleanses the spiritual energy of the body, right? And so for those jellies, or what the French have termed griots, right, who carry the history of the drum and the dance, and for those djembe follers who are masters of the djembe drum, they know what rhythms and what dances to play based on the specific healing needs that you're looking for. Okay. And so you may not necessarily know that if you just go to a random, African dance class in the community, but what you will experience is the ancestral healing that comes from rhythms in general. The fact that communing with the drums and communing with people who are also engaged in the same rhythmic movements allows for emotional expression. It allows for cultural connection, and the release of intergenerational trauma, because you're reconnecting or remembering with the community and with your body and with your lineage, because we are a seed of a seed of a seed of a seed that goes back, all of us, regardless of where we were dropped off. We have Africa as our root. And so I think that for people who are new to traditional African dance and drum, of course, there are opportunities in the cultural community to attend these dance classes. There's drum circles. But even if you are looking for just rhythms itself, I can drop later on in the chat. These rhythms are readily available on YouTube, and so you can actually meditate to these rhythms. There are frequencies that allow for certain healing to open up that is based in traditional African drum rhythms. And of course, djembe is my orientation, but the continent is rich with, hundreds of different traditional drums and rhythms, but they all serve, the same purpose. So that would be an entry point that I would encourage people to explore the cultural arts.
Wonderful, wonderful. And please, yes, drop those links in the chat, because I would love to meditate to some of those.
I would just also like to add, for us in Belize, we do have a rich history of indigenous traditions. And for me, the Garifuna tradition in the tongue that I live, Dangriga, I am able to then connect at the Buyaba, which is the spiritual center that does have dance, songs, and rituals that is definitely intended for the commune. In fact, the entire there is feasting with the spirit. And that means that through family connections, and even for myself that have adapted myself onto the tradition that does not have a biological family lineage, I do have adopted family lineage that does allow you to commune with the spirits, and where people are then able to bring messages from the spirit world to the physical world to heal and to support people in their healing journeys. And so even as it relates to, mass dance on the street, the Wanoroga, the Jankunu, my son came out to be a Jankunu, a dancer. And so I had to learn the ways of the dancers, and how the spirit comes through the dancer, and how that is played out on the streets, and how that support the healing journeys of the community, the healing of the entire community. And so there's also, I think we could share a video that I shared with the Abe Mehani, the women who does a women's only dance. The Abe Mehani is the man only, but that's also a dance that is done only with women voices and women connecting with each other. It's actually a very healing dance, and it's a dance that is showing that as women, we have the ability to support each other, to heal each other, to just with the rhythm of our bodies to say that we are here for each other. And so that is obviously a very healing and community minded support that helps in healing, because the idea of Western individualism is, is very destructive to our mental health and to our mental well-being. And so those are also available for people to, and I will definitely be able to share in the chat or on the website some of those examples of those rhythms to heal. And I think also, just before coming here, who came to my mind simple is Nina Simone. And I was like, for women. And if you just think about, I was playing, that was the tune that came to me. That was what came to me. So it's not like it's also in our contemporary music and in our contemporary way. So I think that we could also find healings there. While I'm saying yes, there is the traditionals and all those things, but I'm also saying that in contemporary messages, for me, a lot of in reggae music, Bob Marley, for example, bring a great deal of healing and messaging as it relates to love and work, being together with people and those kinds of traditions. And so I think that we have a lot, and we shouldn't limit ourselves. We should embrace all the traditions, because to me, we have come on this journey and we have that huge repository of richness that we can draw from. Don't be shy to claim, reclaim, and claim again what is ours. So that would be my position on that as it relates to healing.
I'll just jump in. I hope you can hear me, even if you can't see me.
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay. One thing that we do to start to heal is through ritual. And there are many different kinds of ritual. And the word ritual is also like laden with Western conception of what ritual is. When in fact, even when you breathe with awareness, you are aware. It's a ritual. Another thing is to be comfortable with silence, solitude, and no thing or nothing. To be comfortable with that. Incidentally, I'm speaking to you in the dark, and then it kind of reminds us of how they used to say Africa is a dark continent, because they did not understand our light and how our light reflects. So I always say that black or dark is the color of the incubator. It's incubation. It's in the darkness, in the no light, no thing, that we understand who we are, especially in times of trouble. And another way, ritual, we start from the beginning. There's a lot of rituals that we have lost. For instance, with my work in birth work, before you even conceive, the elders who take you to a cave or to an anthill to invite a soul to come through you. So this soul that comes through you has been invited to come to the earth realm. And the ritual starts pre-conception. And after conception, there's other rituals. During pregnancy, there's other rituals. When you're giving birth, there's other rituals. Afterwards, there would be a ritual like burying the placenta in the land. And what that means is to connect to the spirit of the land. And that for me is what I always say makes sense to what the African proverb saying that land, we don't inherit land from our ancestors. It's loaned to us by our children. So ritual is like root. And unfortunately, that's the knowledge that we have lost. Our girls menstruate for the first time. There's no ritual for first menstruation. So that we connect and honor woman's blood, and that we step out into the world not as wicked, not as evil. So all of that is important. It's part of healing. And I just want to comment on what Jamila said. I want to share an experience that I had last year. I was teaching a module on Indigenous knowledge and sustainable development, and we invited a master drummer to be part of that. And he brought amazing drums into the room. And you know the feeling, as soon as we see drums, we want to tap on them. And he said, no, 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 do not touch a drum first. Be aligned to it. Be aware of the tree that made it, the skin of the animal that made this drum. Be aware of that. Align yourself with it. And I have to say, Jamila, after that experience, I have deep reverence for a drum. When I see it, I don't jump into tapping on it. I make sure that I honor the spirits of the tree and the skin of an animal that has made it. So there's a lot that we can do. Finally, to say that to heal, we need to deal with internalized oppression. We need to deal with the colonizer inside of us, the colonizer who lives in us. So that when we break free, we should also know that we are breaking free from a part of us. And that's what makes it difficult. So that the healing is not just focusing on external cause of dysfunction. We have to look at our thoughts, our view of the world, the eye through which we see the world. And the question I want to also encourage us to ask is, where in my life am I excellent with messing up? Where in my life am I known to be so brilliant with messing up? And that is the light. That is a place where you might want to start your healing.
Yes, yes, yes. Wow. I feel like you just drop a mic after everything that you all shared. I mean, wow. So I almost think we might need a part 2. We'll see what we can do. We have about 10 minutes left. So we probably have time for at least one question. I am going to do a combo question and try to put these questions together. So let's see how I do. So one is thinking about, how can we engage with religion and spirituality in a way that's not disrespectful to our ancestors and their traditions? So how can we engage in religion and spirituality in a way that is not, that still honors our ancestors' traditions? Also, for someone who they identify as Black American and don't know a lot about their family history beyond grandparents, Do we feel like you need to have an expansive knowledge about your lineage to begin your ancestral healing journey? So if we don't know much family history, do we need to know that? Do we need to know more knowledge about our family to engage in ancestral healing? And then lastly, I'll add, what role does technology, right? We're able to have this talk virtually. We're able to meet from around the world. So what role can technology play in ancestral healing? So if each of you could either speak to any of those questions, and that'll be our last question before we finish today.
I could just speak to the one about not knowing like your ancestors beyond not having an extensive ancestral knowledge. And I don't know my ancestors beyond maybe, my great grandmother, maybe just from my mother's side, I guess. My fathers, they were immigrants, and his father died early, and so there was a lot of, I don't know, but I know I have ancestors and I know that they're there. And so the ones I do know, I try to find the best, and I know, but the ones I do not know, but I still know that they're there because I'm here. And so that's just to encourage people who may think that, well, I don't know them. And so that's cool. You could still just know that they're there, and that, that they're real, and that they're there for you. And you could just, in some ways, just, I don't want to say it like this. There are rituals that you could retrieve and you could go back to, but in starting that journey, you could just start to make up things that makes you feel good through, through dance, through listening to music, through breathing, through the movements. Just start. You just have to start. And I promise you, once you start, people will come and say, oh, there is this person, or there is this institute, or there is that, and you could, connect with this to continue on your journey. So I would like to speak to that, because that is my experience. And so a wonderful teacher came on. She has passed now. She's my ancestors now, who taught me a lot, and who showed me a lot of what was right in front of my face that I didn't see, but who opened my eyes to those truths. So you will find the same also, once that's your wish. So I just wanted to share my experience to let you know that is there, and it's a continuing it's an experience that continue until the day you become an ancestor. And so those that you would have left behind would then look to you for that guidance and support once you're in the spirit realm.
Okay, I'll just jump in. I'll speak to two. The issue of not knowing again. We don't know, but we know. That's what's interesting. We know ancestors are waiting to download information into us. They're waiting for us to connect. Knowledge is not lost. Knowledge is in our DNA. What we do not know is how to connect to the knowledge hub. But once we know how to connect to the knowledge hub, then we will be able to know. I am fortunate. I have a mother who's an archivist who has recorded our family tree right up to 5 generations. In the past birthing course, a sister from the US also raised this issue that I am sad because I can't think of anyone beyond grandmother. And then what we did say was, I said to her, we are just going to work together so that you remember how to connect to your knowledge hub. And in terms of religion, I think for me, religion, when I step into that, I practice cultural humility because religion is a divisive force. And people hold different beliefs. But you can't operate from spirit and not be able to practice cultural humility and not be able to listen to people who hold different views and also be aware of how their views trigger you, because that place of trigger, I mean, Rumi says, your wound is the side or the place where light enters you. So wound also serve a purpose because it gives us an opportunity for the light to come in. And in in terms of technology, I'd say technology is amazing. That's why we're here. That's why we are gathering across time zones, across great waters. We are able to share whatever we share tonight. So thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Just add a small piece connected to that second question around what happens if we have limited knowledge or awareness of our ancestors. And it's actually a very common issue, especially for people of African descent within the United States. Oftentimes, many people can feel disconnected from their roots. They don't know where they've come from past 1 or 2 generations, or their family has been broken apart by colonization, displacement, migration. Even within my family, coming from the Caribbean, birth records were not maintained, in the way that records were maintained here. And some of the elders can't even say exactly what when they were born. It's a very different kind of system. And so, interestingly enough, I think that is less of the problem, because as was already shared, and we have this African proverb that speaks to this. A tree doesn't die if the roots are deep, right? A tree doesn't die if the roots are deep. And so we know that you can be disconnected from ancestors, not have an awareness of your lineage, not go through the process of finding out going through the DNA testing, but the ancestral DNA is still there. And one practical thing that I think people can do is go to the land. Go to the land. And even if that land is South Carolina, or, somewhere in Michigan or upstate New York, go to the land. Go to the region in which your parents or your grandparents walked the soil. Put your hand in the soil. Drink the water, the natural water of that locale. And the reason is there's a vibrational energy that exists in the land. There's a vibrational energy that exists in the water. And by putting our hands in the earth, walking the earth, taking our shoes off, drinking the water, it holds memories, right? Water is an energetic vibration. It includes information on the land. And that's a small thing that everybody could do, even if you don't have the lineage. And so it has the power to reconnect you with things that you've lost touch with through nature. And somebody mentioned this in the chat earlier, but nature is a powerful manifestation of ancestral healing. And so that download that Mama talked about happens on various frequencies.
Thank you, thank you. And to repeat that again, a tree does not die if the roots are deep. I think that's a wonderful quote to end with. And we really hope that we watered your roots here. We hope that, I know I gained a lot. We hope that there's a lot of knowledge and wisdom that you can take with you. I'm so thankful to the panelists for sharing their knowledge and also sharing the ways that they're learning and continue to grow in doing this work. I do want to mention the chat again. Dr. Motesi has an online school And she has graciously offered a discount code for one of her upcoming courses. If you've seen the flyers, we also have Jamila and Michele's information on there. So if you want to become our pen pals, feel free. And just to kind of close us out, lastly, I just ask, what's one word or a couple words that you hope participants walk away with today?
This might sound cliche, but there's a common saying that young people here say that I am my ancestors' wildest dreams. What that means is that as new shoots of this massive tree come out, they look different. They step out differently. So they carry the DNA of the bigger tree, but they are also unique. They are unique in their own way. So we are definitely our ancestors' wildest dreams. They probably looking down at us and being so proud of how we are talking about healing ourselves, because when we heal ourselves, we also heal some of our unhealed ancestors.
I will add, nobody's coming to save us. No one is coming to save us. Our ancestors have done the work, and the answers have already been whispered to us. And so we just have to listen, especially in these dark times.
Correct. And I will just add, I put it in the chat, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So as soon as we make ourselves ready, we'll continue to learn. So thank you very, very much.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Again, thank you so much to our dear panelists. Thank you to everyone who showed up and stayed with us today. We hope that you're able to carry some of the spirit and energy with you throughout the rest of the day. And please continue to check the Ancestral Institute's website for more info on our upcoming webinars and our forum that will be occurring in Belize. All right, thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.